The snow fell gently on the Norfolk countryside as three figures stepped out of the black Range Rover, their breath visible in the crisp December air. What appeared to be a simple family outing to a Christmas show would become the moment that changed everything for the British royal family. Behind the carefully orchestrated public appearance lay months of private struggle, whispered conversations in palace corridors, and a decision that would either heal deep wounds or create irreparable damage to the monarchy's future. Princess Catherine adjusted her elegant wool coat as she walked between Charlotte and Louis, her protective instincts heightened by the weight of what this evening represented. The cameras clicked incessantly, capturing what the world believed was just another charming royal engagement. They had no idea they were witnessing the first public step in a carefully planned strategy to secure the crown's survival through its youngest members. The Christmas show in Norfolk wasn't chosen by accident. Every detail had been meticulously planned by palace advisors who understood that the monarchy's future depended not on grand gestures or formal announcements, but on moments like these, intimate, authentic, and utterly human. As the trio approached the venue, Catherine's hand gently guided her children forward, knowing that their performance tonight would be scrutinized by millions and could determine the royal family's relationship with the public for generations to come. What the photographers didn't capture was the conversation that had taken place in the car just minutes before. Charlotte, now mature beyond her years, had asked the question that had been haunting the palace for months: "Mummy, are we doing this because people don't like us anymore?" Catherine's response would echo through the halls of power and influence the very foundation of how the monarchy would reinvent itself for the modern age. This is the story of how a Christmas show in Norfolk became the catalyst for the most significant transformation in royal protocol since Diana's death, told through the eyes of those who lived it and the consequences that followed. The morning mist hung low over the Sandringham estate as Catherine, Princess of Wales, sat in her private study, staring at the seemingly innocent invitation that had arrived 3 weeks earlier. The cream-colored paper bore the elegant logo of the Norfolk Community Theatre, requesting her presence at their annual Christmas show. What made this invitation different from the hundreds of others she received each month was the handwritten note at the bottom, penned by the theater's director: "Your children would particularly enjoy our new interactive Christmas story. We understand young Prince Louis has been asking about the magic of Christmas." Catherine's fingers traced the words as she remembered the conversation with Louis just days before. Her youngest son, now 5 years old and increasingly curious about the world beyond palace walls, had asked her why their family never attended normal Christmas shows like his friends at school. The innocent question had struck her more deeply than she expected, highlighting a growing concern that had been weighing on her mind for months. The royal family's approval ratings had been fluctuating, and palace advisors had been quietly discussing the need for more relatable public appearances. The traditional royal engagements, while important, seemed to create distance between the monarchy and ordinary families. Catherine had been advocating for a different approach, one that would show her children as the regular kids they were beneath their royal titles. Her private secretary, James Morrison, knocked gently on the door before entering. A man in his early 50s with graying temples and an unflappable demeanor, James had been managing Catherine's schedule for 3 years. He understood her desire to balance royal duties with genuine family moments better than anyone else in the palace hierarchy. "Ma'am, about the Norfolk invitation," James began, settling into the chair across from her desk. "I've spoken with the security team and the theater management. They're willing to accommodate whatever arrangements we need to make." Catherine looked up from the invitation, her expression thoughtful. "What are your initial thoughts about taking Charlotte and Louis?" James had anticipated this question. The venue seats approximately 200 people, which makes security manageable. The theater has a strong reputation in the community, and their Christmas show has been running for 15 years without incident. The audience would primarily be local families, which could create a more intimate atmosphere than our usual public engagements. "And the press?" Catherine asked, knowing that any public appearance with her children would attract significant media attention. "That's where it becomes more complex," James admitted. "We could arrange a controlled photo opportunity before the show, which might satisfy the press pool and allow you to enjoy the performance with minimal disruption. Alternatively, we could attempt to keep the attendance private, though that carries the risk of unauthorized photography." Catherine stood and walked to the window overlooking the estate grounds. In the distance, she could see Charlotte and Louis playing with their security detail in the garden, their laughter carrying on the winter air. Charlotte, now 8 years old, had been asking more frequently about when she would begin taking on royal duties. The weight of her future responsibilities seemed to grow heavier each month, and Catherine was determined to give her daughter as many normal childhood experiences as possible before that burden became unavoidable. Louis, on the other hand, remained blissfully unaware of the complexities of his position. His biggest concerns involved whether he could bring his favorite toy dinosaur to official events and when he would be allowed to ride the horses in the stable. Catherine treasured these moments of innocence, knowing they would become increasingly rare as he grew older. "There's something else to consider," Catherine said, turning back to James. "This could be an opportunity to change how people perceive royal parenting. We've been so careful about protecting their privacy that sometimes I wonder if we've created too much distance." James nodded slowly. He had noticed the shift in public opinion polling over the past year. While the royal family remained generally popular, there was growing curiosity about the day-to-day lives of the younger generation. Social media had amplified this interest, with hashtags like #RoyalKids and #ModernMonarchy trending regularly. "The children's grandmother has always emphasized the importance of duty," Catherine continued, "but I want them to understand that duty can coexist with joy. A Christmas show in Norfolk could demonstrate that beautifully." The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Catherine's personal assistant, Sarah, entered with a stack of correspondence and a cup of tea. Sarah had been with the family for 2 years and had developed an intuitive understanding of when Catherine needed space to think and when she needed practical solutions. "Forgive the interruption, ma'am," Sarah said quietly. "But Master Louis is asking if he can speak with you about something important. He's waiting in the morning room with his notebook." Catherine smiled. Louis had recently begun keeping a notebook of important questions that he would present to her during their daily conversations. Yesterday's list had included inquiries about why snow was white, whether the Queen's corgis could read, and if Christmas presents made themselves. "Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes," Catherine replied. "And, Sarah, could you ask Charlotte if she would like to join us? I think today's conversation might interest her as well." After Sarah left, Catherine turned back to James. "I want to accept the Norfolk invitation, but I want to do it properly. No half measures, no excessive security presence that would intimidate the other families. If we're going to show that royal children can enjoy simple pleasures, then we need to trust that the people of Norfolk will respect our presence there." James made notes on his tablet, already mentally organizing the logistics required for such an event. "I'll need to coordinate with local police, the theater management, and our own security team. We should also consider how to handle gift-giving if other children approach Charlotte and Louis." "Actually," Catherine said, her eyes lighting up with an idea, "what if we turned that into something positive? We could bring small gifts to share with the other children at the show. Nothing expensive or elaborate, just little Christmas tokens that show we're part of the community for that evening." This suggestion made James pause. Royal protocol typically discouraged spontaneous gift exchanges, particularly ones that hadn't been carefully vetted and approved by multiple departments. However, he could see the appeal of Catherine's approach. It would demonstrate warmth and accessibility while reinforcing the family's connection to traditional Christmas values. "That would require some careful planning," James said diplomatically. "But I think we could make it work. Perhaps small Christmas ornaments or candy canes that have been properly sourced and approved." Catherine was already envisioning how the evening might unfold. She imagined Charlotte and Louis sitting among other children, clapping along with Christmas carols, their faces lit up with the same wonder and excitement as any other young audience members. The thought of providing them with such a normal experience filled her with determination to make the evening successful. "There's one more thing," Catherine said, sitting back down at her desk. "I want William to know about this, but I don't want it to become a committee decision. This is about giving our children a genuine Christmas experience, not creating another formal royal engagement." James understood the delicate balance she was trying to achieve. Prince William's schedule was particularly demanding during the Christmas season, and his protective instincts regarding the children's public exposure sometimes conflicted with Catherine's desire for normalcy.
However, James also knew that William trusted Catherine's judgment about family matters implicitly.
"I suggest we present it to His Royal Highness as a confirmed plan rather than a proposal," James said. "If you're comfortable with the security arrangements and the venue has been properly vetted, he's likely to support your decision." Catherine picked up her pen and began making notes on the invitation itself.
She wrote down potential dates, timing considerations, and ideas for the children's preparation.
She wanted Charlotte and Louis to understand that this evening would be both special and normal, a combination that perfectly captured her hopes for their upbringing. The afternoon passed quickly as Catherine and James worked through the practical details of the Norfolk visit. They discussed everything from appropriate clothing choices to backup plans in case of bad weather or unexpected complications. By the time they finished their planning session, Catherine felt confident that they could create the kind of authentic family experience she had been hoping to provide for her children. As evening approached, Catherine made her way to the nursery where Charlotte and Louis were finishing their homework with their governess. The sight of them bent over their books, Charlotte helping Louis with his reading while unconsciously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in exactly the same gesture Catherine used, filled her with love and determination. "I have something exciting to tell you both," Catherine announced, settling into the chair between their desks. "We've been invited to a very special Christmas show in Norfolk, and I thought you might like to attend together." Charlotte looked up immediately, her eyes bright with interest.
"What kind of Christmas show, Mummy?"
"It's a story about Christmas magic, performed by actors and musicians for families in the community," Catherine explained. "There will be other children there, and we'll sit in the audience just like everyone else." Louis dropped his pencil and turned his full attention to his mother.
"Will there be singing? And can I clap when the music plays?"
Yes to both questions, Catherine laughed.
"In fact, I think clapping and singing along is expected at this kind of show." Charlotte's expression grew more thoughtful.
At 8 years old, she was beginning to understand the difference between their family's public appearances and private moments.
"Will there be photographers there, Mummy? Will we have to wave and smile for pictures?"
Catherine appreciated her daughter's awareness and wanted to answer honestly. "There might be a few photographs when we arrive, but once we're inside watching the show, it will just be about enjoying the story and the music.
We'll be there as a family, not as representatives of anything else."
This explanation seemed to satisfy Charlotte, who returned to her homework with a small smile.
Louis, however, had more immediate concerns. "Can I wear my reindeer jumper?" he asked seriously. "The one with the lights that blink?"
"I think that would be perfect for a Christmas show," Catherine replied, making a mental note to check with James about any potential issues with light-up clothing and photography. As she tucked her children into bed that evening, Catherine felt a sense of anticipation that reminded her of her own childhood Christmas experiences. She realized that in trying to give Charlotte and Louis a normal evening out, she was also giving herself permission to step outside the carefully structured world of royal protocol and remember what it felt like to simply be a mother taking her children to see a Christmas show. The Norfolk Community Theatre had no idea that their simple invitation had sparked a quiet revolution in royal thinking, one that would ultimately change how the monarchy approached family life and public engagement for years to come. The following morning brought unexpected complications that would test Catherine's resolve to provide her children with a normal Christmas experience. She woke to find several missed calls from the palace press office, and her phone buzzing with messages from various royal correspondents who had somehow learned about the Norfolk invitation. Catherine's first call was to her private secretary, James, who answered on the first ring despite the early hour. His voice carried the controlled tension that she had come to recognize during particularly challenging weeks.
"Ma'am, I'm afraid we have a situation," James began without preamble. "Someone at the theater must have mentioned your potential attendance to a local journalist.
The story appeared online about an hour ago, and it's already being picked up by the major news outlets." Catherine sank into the chair by her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the estate grounds. She had hoped to keep the planning stages private, allowing the family time to prepare without external pressure.
The premature media attention would complicate everything, potentially transforming their quiet family outing into a major public event. "What exactly has been reported?" Catherine asked, already dreading the answer.
The headline reads Royal Children to Make Rare Public Appearance at Local Christmas Show, James replied. The article speculates about your motivations for choosing such a modest venue and questions whether this represents a new direction for royal public engagements. Catherine closed her eyes, feeling the familiar weight of scrutiny that accompanied every decision involving her children. The media's ability to transform even the simplest family activities into subjects of national debate never ceased to amaze and frustrate her. She could already imagine the competing narratives that would emerge. Some outlets would praise her for providing normal experiences for Charlotte and Louis, while others would criticize the informality or question the security implications.
Have you spoken with William about this development? Catherine asked.
His Royal Highness is in early meetings this morning, but I've left word that we need to speak with him urgently, James replied. I suspect he'll want to discuss whether we should proceed as planned or postpone until the media attention dies down. Catherine understood William's protective instincts regarding their children's privacy, but she also knew that postponing would send its own message. The media would interpret any cancellation as evidence that the royal family couldn't handle normal public interactions, which would undermine the very goal she hoped to achieve. James, I want you to arrange a conference call with William, the security team, and the theater management for this afternoon, Catherine decided. We're not canceling this outing because of premature media coverage. If anything, this proves why we need to normalize these kinds of family activities. After ending the call, Catherine made her way downstairs to find Charlotte and Louis already awake and discussing the Christmas show over breakfast. Neither child was yet aware of the media attention, and Catherine was determined to keep their excitement innocent and uncomplicated as long as possible. Mummy, Charlotte said as Catherine joined them at the table, I've been thinking about the Christmas show. Should we learn some Christmas songs so we can sing along properly? The question touched Catherine's heart. Her daughter's natural consideration for others and desire to participate appropriately demonstrated exactly the kind of character that Catherine hoped to nurture. Charlotte understood instinctively that being royal didn't mean being separate from others, but rather finding ways to contribute positively to shared experiences. That's a wonderful idea, Catherine replied, pouring herself tea while considering how to frame the developing situation. Actually, there's something I should tell you both about our evening out. Louis looked up from his cereal, immediately sensing the shift in his mother's tone. Despite his young age, he had developed an acute awareness of when adult conversations turned serious. Is something wrong with the Christmas show? He asked, his lower lip beginning to protrude in the expression that typically preceded tears. Nothing is wrong with the show itself, Catherine assured him quickly. But sometimes when our family does things in public, newspapers like to write stories about it. That's happening now, even though we haven't gone to the show yet. Charlotte's expression grew more mature, reflecting her growing understanding of their family's unique position. Are people upset that we want to go to a regular Christmas show? Not upset, exactly, Catherine explained carefully. More curious about why we chose this particular show and what it means. Some people think everything our family does must have a special reason beyond simply wanting to enjoy ourselves. This conversation represented exactly the kind of balancing act that Catherine faced daily as a royal parent. She needed to prepare her children for public attention without making them feel burdened by it, to help them understand their responsibilities without destroying their natural spontaneity and joy. Can we still go? Louis asked, his priority remaining firmly focused on the essential question. Yes, we can still go, Catherine confirmed. But there might be more photographers than we originally expected, and people might be watching to see how we behave during the show. Charlotte considered this information seriously. At 8 years old, she had already attended several formal royal events and understood the basic expectations of public behavior. However, the prospect of being watched during what was supposed to be a relaxed family activity clearly concerned her. Will we have to sit differently or clap differently because people are watching? Charlotte asked. Catherine's heart ached at the question. Her daughter was already learning to modify her natural responses based on external expectations, a skill that would serve her well in her future role but that Catherine desperately wanted to delay for as long as possible. No, darling, Catherine said firmly. We're going to this show to enjoy ourselves as a family. If other people want to watch us having fun together, that's their choice. Our job is simply to be present and appreciative of the performance. The rest of the breakfast passed with more practical discussions about what to wear and what to expect from a community theater performance. Catherine found herself drawing on memories of her own childhood theater experiences, describing the excitement of live performances and the special magic that happened when actors and audience shared the same space. By mid-morning, Catherine had received calls from 3 different palace departments, each offering their perspective on how to handle the Norfolk situation.
The press office wanted to arrange controlled media access to minimize unauthorized photography.
The security team preferred postponing until they could conduct additional venue assessments.
The protocol office suggested transforming the outing into a formal royal visit with all the traditional ceremonial elements.
Catherine rejected all 3 suggestions during a heated conference call that lasted nearly 2 hours. Her frustration grew as each department head explained why a simple family outing couldn't remain simple, why every royal activity had to be filtered through layers of protocol and security concerns.
With all due respect, Catherine finally interrupted, "I'm not asking permission to take my children to a Christmas show. I'm informing you that we will be attending, and I need your support in making it as normal an experience as possible for everyone involved."
The silence that followed her declaration was telling. Catherine rarely used such direct language with palace staff, preferring to work collaboratively toward solutions. However, the Norfolk Christmas show had become symbolic of a much larger issue: her children's right to experience childhood joy without constant institutional interference. James Morrison, who had been listening quietly to the debate, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, if I may suggest a compromise approach.
What if we treat this as a test case for a new kind of royal engagement?
We could develop protocols that prioritize family authenticity while still meeting our security and media obligations." This suggestion intrigued Catherine because it reframed the Norfolk visit as something innovative rather than problematic. Instead of struggling against established royal traditions, they could be creating new ones that better reflected contemporary family values. "Explain what you mean by that," Catherine requested. "We could establish guidelines for family integration events," James continued, "public activities where the primary goal is normalcy rather than representation. These events would have minimal security presence, casual dress codes, and natural interaction with other attendees. The media coverage would be limited to arrival and departure, with no formal interviews or staged photo opportunities."
Catherine could see the appeal of this approach.
It would give her framework for future similar activities while demonstrating that the royal family could evolve its practices without abandoning its core responsibilities. The afternoon conference call with William proved to be the crucial conversation that would determine whether the Norfolk visit proceeded as planned. William joined from his office at Kensington Palace, having spent the morning reviewing security reports and media coverage of the story. "Catherine, I understand your motivations for this outing," William began, "but I'm concerned about setting precedents that we might not be able to maintain consistently."
Catherine had anticipated this concern.
William's systematic approach to royal duties sometimes conflicted with her more intuitive parenting style, but she respected his commitment to protecting their children's long-term interests.
"William, I think we need to consider what kind of precedent we're setting by not doing normal family activities," Catherine replied.
"If we only appear in public during formal engagements, we're teaching Charlotte and Louis that being royal means being separate from ordinary life." "But there are security implications," William continued. "Community venues don't have the same protective measures as our usual locations.
If something goes wrong, we won't have the same response capabilities."
The security team leader, Commander Sarah Mitchell, joined the conversation with detailed assessments of the Norfolk Community Theater. Her report was thorough but ultimately reassuring. The venue had clear sightlines, multiple exit routes, and a long history of hosting local events without incident. The greater security risk, Commander Mitchell concluded, might actually come from canceling at this point. The media attention has already drawn significant interest to the venue, and postponing could create ongoing speculation about our security concerns. This practical argument seemed to resonate with William more than emotional appeals about childhood normalcy.
Catherine watched his expression soften as he considered the tactical advantages of proceeding with the original plan. "What about the children's preparation?" William asked. "How do we help them handle potentially increased attention without making them anxious?"
Catherine had been thinking about this challenge since the morning's phone calls. She wanted Charlotte and Louis to feel confident and comfortable, but not rehearsed or artificial. "I think honesty is the best approach," Catherine said. "We tell them that some people are excited to see them at the show, but that our focus remains on enjoying the performance. We practice normal theater etiquette and remind them that their behavior should be the same whether cameras are present or not." By the end of the call, William had agreed to support the Norfolk visit, though he requested daily updates on security arrangements and media management. Catherine felt relieved that the family could move forward united, presenting a consistent message about their values and priorities. That evening, as she helped Charlotte and Louis prepare for bed, Catherine reflected on how a simple theater invitation had evolved into a complex negotiation about royal identity and family values. She realized that every decision involving her children would carry this kind of weight, requiring her to balance their individual needs against institutional expectations. "Mummy," Charlotte said as Catherine tucked her in, "are you nervous about going to the Christmas show?" The question surprised Catherine with its perceptiveness. She had been focusing so intently on managing external pressures that she hadn't considered her own emotional response to the evening. "A little nervous," Catherine admitted. "But mostly excited to watch you and Louis experience live theater for the first time." "I think it will be lovely," Charlotte said sleepily. "And I think the other children there will be glad to meet us." Catherine kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at Charlotte's natural optimism and social awareness. Perhaps the most important lesson from the Norfolk Christmas show wouldn't be about royal protocol or media management, but about trusting in the fundamental goodness of people and the simple pleasure of shared experiences. As she turned off the lights in the children's rooms, Catherine felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Norfolk Community Theatre might not have realized it, but they had provided the royal family with an opportunity to demonstrate that tradition and authenticity could coexist, that being royal didn't require sacrificing the joy and wonder of ordinary family life. The morning of the Christmas show dawned crisp and clear, with fresh snow dusting the Norfolk countryside like powdered sugar on a holiday cake. Catherine woke earlier than usual, her mind immediately turning to the day's agenda and the dozens of small details that would determine whether their evening at the theater succeeded in its larger purpose. Standing at her bedroom window, she could see the estate groundskeepers already clearing the main drive, ensuring safe passage for their evening departure. In the distance, she spotted two unmarked vehicles that she recognized as advanced security teams conducting final route assessments. The sight reminded her that even their most casual family outings required extensive coordination and planning. Catherine's morning routine felt different today, charged with anticipation and nervous energy. As she dressed in comfortable slacks and a cashmere sweater, she thought about the careful balance they were trying to achieve. The outfit needed to be appropriate for a royal appearance while remaining relaxed enough for a community theater setting. Every choice today carried symbolic weight that extended far beyond personal preference. By 7 o'clock, Catherine had already received 3 updates from James Morrison regarding media positioning, traffic management, and final security clearances. The local police had been extraordinarily cooperative, working with the palace security team to create an unobtrusive but effective protective perimeter around the theater venue. "Ma'am," James reported during their morning briefing, "we've had an interesting development. The Norfolk Community Theatre has received over 50 flower deliveries since yesterday, all from well-wishers hoping to welcome your family to the performance." Catherine smiled at this unexpected gesture. The spontaneous outpouring of support suggested that the local community viewed their attendance as a positive addition to the evening rather than an intrusion. This response reinforced her belief that people naturally wanted to include the royal family in ordinary celebrations when given the opportunity. "What does the theater management suggest we do with the flowers?" Catherine asked. "They've proposed creating a beautiful display in the lobby and asking that any additional deliveries be redirected to the local hospital and nursing homes," James replied. "They thought you might appreciate the gesture while ensuring the flowers serve the broader community." "That's perfect," Catherine agreed. "It turns the generosity into something that benefits everyone." Charlotte and Louis bounded into the breakfast room with unusual energy, their excitement about the evening's adventure evident in their animated chatter and inability to sit still. Charlotte had already changed clothes twice, unable to decide between her favorite red dress and a more casual burgundy sweater that she thought might be more appropriate for a theater setting.
"Mummy, what if we get there and don't know the songs?" Louis asked, his concern reflecting the intensity with which he approached new experiences.
Catherine had anticipated this worry and had prepared accordingly. Mrs. Thompson found recordings of some traditional Christmas carols that might be included in the show, she said, referring to their music teacher.
"Would you like to listen to them after breakfast?"
Louis nodded enthusiastically, while Charlotte seemed more interested in the social dynamics of the evening.
"Mummy, should we introduce ourselves to the other children, or wait for them to speak to us first?"
The question demonstrated Charlotte's growing awareness of social protocol and her desire to navigate unfamiliar situations appropriately. Catherine appreciated her daughter's consideration but wanted to encourage natural friendliness rather than formal behavior.
"I think you should behave exactly as you would if you were meeting new friends at school," Catherine suggested.
"If someone seems interested in talking with you, feel free to be friendly and welcoming.
If they prefer to focus on the show, that's perfectly fine too."
The morning passed quickly with final preparations and discussions about theater etiquette. Catherine found herself drawing on memories of her own childhood experiences, describing the magic of live performance and the special connection between actors and audience. She wanted Charlotte and Louis to understand that they were participating in something much larger than their individual attendance. William arrived for lunch, having cleared his afternoon schedule to spend time with the family before their departure. His presence immediately calmed Catherine's remaining anxieties about the evening's logistics. Despite his initial concerns about security and precedent, William had become genuinely enthusiastic about giving their children this experience.
"I've been thinking about what this evening represents," William said as they sat down to lunch.
"It's not just about attending a Christmas show, but about demonstrating that royal service includes participating in community life."
Catherine nodded, appreciating his ability to frame their family outing in terms of their larger responsibilities.
This perspective would help Charlotte understand that their attendance served a purpose beyond personal entertainment, while still maintaining the evening's essential joy and spontaneity.
"Daddy, will you come with us to the show?"
Louis asked, looking up from his sandwich with hopeful eyes.
William's expression grew apologetic.
"I wish I could, but I have commitments this evening that I can't change.
However, I want you to tell me all about the performance tomorrow morning." Catherine understood the complexity of William's position.
His attendance would have fundamentally altered the evening's dynamics, requiring additional security measures and protocol considerations that would have transformed the intimate family outing into a major royal event. Sometimes protecting the experience meant making difficult choices about participation.
The afternoon brought final wardrobe decisions and a last-minute rehearsal of basic theater etiquette.
Catherine watched Charlotte practice applauding appropriately and Louis work on sitting still during quiet dramatic moments. Their earnest preparation touched her heart and reinforced her determination to provide them with as normal an experience as possible.
At 4 o'clock, James arrived with the final security briefing and a detailed timeline for the evening's events.
The plan called for departure from Sandringham at 5:30, arrival at the Norfolk Community Theatre at 6:15, and attendance at the 7 o'clock performance. The show was scheduled to run approximately 90 minutes with one intermission, followed by a brief opportunity for Catherine and the children to thank the cast and crew. The media pool will be positioned outside the theater entrance, James explained.
"We've arranged for a very brief photo opportunity when you arrive, after which they'll be asked to respect the performance by not attempting any photography inside the venue."
Catherine appreciated the compromise that allowed legitimate media coverage while protecting the intimate nature of the theatrical experience. The arrangement demonstrated that royal accessibility and media responsibility could coexist when both sides approached the situation with mutual respect.
"What about gift exchanges?" Catherine asked, remembering their earlier discussion about bringing small tokens for other children.
"We've prepared 50 small Christmas ornaments featuring traditional Norfolk designs," James replied. "They're individually wrapped and will be available if spontaneous gift-giving opportunities arise." As evening approached, Catherine felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and responsibility that accompanied all public appearances with her children. However, today's emotions carried an additional layer of hope that this experience would prove successful enough to justify future similar outings. Charlotte appeared in her chosen outfit, the burgundy sweater paired with navy slacks and her favorite boots. She had styled her hair in a simple ponytail and added a small Christmas pin that had belonged to her grandmother. The overall effect was both polished and age-appropriate, striking exactly the right balance for the evening ahead. Louis had selected his promised reindeer jumper, complete with blinking lights that delighted him enormously. Catherine had initially worried about the attention-grabbing nature of the illuminated sweater, but James had confirmed that it would actually help maintain the evening's informal atmosphere while ensuring Louis felt confident and comfortable. The drive to Norfolk passed peacefully, with Charlotte and Louis singing Christmas carols and discussing their expectations for the performance. Catherine found herself relaxing as they left the estate grounds, feeling for the first time in weeks like a mother simply taking her children to a special evening out. "Mummy," Charlotte said as they approached the theater district, "I can see lots of cars already there. Do you think the other families are as excited as we are?" Catherine looked out at the busy streets surrounding the Norfolk Community Theater, noting the unusual number of pedestrians and the festive decorations adorning nearby shops. The entire area seemed to be celebrating their visit, with Christmas lights twinkling in storefront windows and people gathering on sidewalks despite the cold December air. "I think everyone is excited about the Christmas show," Catherine replied diplomatically, though she could see that their attendance had definitely drawn additional interest to the evening's performance. As their vehicle turned onto the street housing the theater, Catherine got her first glimpse of the media presence that would document their arrival. Approximately 20 photographers and television cameras were positioned behind barriers, creating a controlled but visible reminder of their family's public status. "Are those the people who will take our pictures?" Louis asked, pressing his face to the window with characteristic 5-year-old directness. "Yes, but remember what we discussed," Catherine said gently. "We'll wave hello when we get out of the car, then focus on getting inside to see the show." Charlotte straightened her posture and checked her appearance in the window reflection, already shifting into the composed public demeanor that came naturally to her. Catherine marveled at her daughter's ability to adapt to different situations while maintaining her essential warmth and authenticity. The car stopped in front of the theater entrance, where Catherine could see theater management waiting to welcome them along with several families who had clearly arrived early hoping to catch a glimpse of the royal visitors. The scene looked exactly as she had hoped, busy and festive but not overwhelming, excited but not frenzied. "Ready?" Catherine asked, looking at both children. Charlotte nodded confidently while Louis bounced slightly in his seat, his reindeer jumper lights blinking rapidly in rhythm with his excitement. "Let's go enjoy our Christmas show," Catherine said, opening the car door and stepping out into the crisp Norfolk evening that would ultimately change how the royal family approached public life forever. The brief walk from the car to the theater entrance felt like a gentle parade of goodwill. Catherine held Louis's hand while Charlotte walked beside them, all three smiling genuinely at the warm reception from both media and gathered families. The flashing cameras captured what appeared to be a perfectly normal family arriving for an evening's entertainment, which was precisely the image Catherine had hoped to project. Inside the theater lobby, the transformation from public figures to audience members happened almost immediately. The warm lighting, the scent of hot chocolate being served at the concession stand, and the excited chatter of children created an atmosphere that enveloped them in community celebration rather than royal protocol. Catherine looked around the beautifully decorated lobby, noting the careful balance of elegance and accessibility that characterized the best community venues. This was exactly the kind of place where she wanted her children to feel comfortable and welcome, where their titles mattered less than their appreciation for the arts and their respect for the performers who would soon take the stage. The Norfolk Community Theater's lobby buzzed with the energy of families gathering for the evening's performance, but Catherine immediately noticed how naturally their presence had been integrated into the pre-show atmosphere. Rather than creating a separate space or special treatment, the theater management had simply ensured that their seats were accessible while allowing them to mingle freely with other attendees. Charlotte and Louis stood close to Catherine as they made their way through the lobby, their eyes wide with wonder at the festive decorations and the excitement of other children around them. The theater had been transformed into a winter wonderland, with twinkling lights, artificial snow, and Christmas trees creating magical corners throughout the space. "Mummy, look at the ceiling," Louis whispered, pointing upward to where hundreds of paper snowflakes hung from invisible threads, creating the illusion of gentle snowfall in the warm lobby. Catherine followed his gaze, sharing his sense of wonder. The simple but effective decorations reminded her why community theatre held such a special place in British cultural life. These productions relied on creativity and heart rather than expensive technology, often producing more authentic emotional responses than elaborate professional shows. A woman approached them tentatively, her two young children hanging back shyly behind her. Catherine recognized the careful politeness of someone unsure about proper protocol for meeting royal family members in such an informal setting. "Your Royal Highness," the woman began, then paused, clearly uncertain about the appropriate level of formality for the occasion. "Please, call me Catherine tonight," Catherine replied warmly, extending her hand in greeting. "We're all just families here to enjoy the Christmas show together." This simple response seemed to break invisible barriers throughout the lobby. Other parents began approaching more naturally, and their children started interacting with Charlotte and Louis with the easy friendliness that Catherine had hoped to encourage. "I'm Emma," the first woman continued, visibly relaxing. "These are my children, Sophie and James. They're about the same ages as yours and have been talking about nothing but tonight's show for weeks." Sophie, who appeared to be Charlotte's age, stepped forward with endearing boldness. "Princess Charlotte, do you like Christmas plays? This is my third year coming to this one, and it gets better every time." Charlotte's face lit up at being addressed so naturally. "I've never been to a Christmas play before," she admitted. "What happens during the show?" "They tell the story of how Christmas magic was almost lost but, then, saved by children who believed in it," Sophie explained enthusiastically. "And there's singing and dancing, and sometimes they ask the audience to help with the magic spells." Louis had been listening to this conversation with growing excitement. "Do we get to help with magic?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Sometimes they ask for volunteers," James, Sophie's younger brother, replied. "Last year they needed someone to help light the Christmas star, and my sister got chosen." Catherine watched this exchange with deep satisfaction. Her children were experiencing exactly what she had hoped for: normal interaction with peers who saw them primarily as potential playmates rather than royal figures. The conversation flowed naturally, focused on shared excitement about the upcoming performance rather than formal courtesies or awkward protocol. The theater's artistic director, Mrs. Patricia Henley, approached their group with the relaxed confidence of someone accustomed to managing diverse audiences. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and wearing a festive scarf, she embodied the community theater spirit that had drawn Catherine to accept the original invitation. "Catherine, I'm so delighted you and your children could join us tonight," Mrs. Henley said. "Our cast has been particularly excited knowing they'll be performing for such an appreciative audience." "We're honored to be here," Catherine replied genuinely. "Community theater represents something very special about British cultural tradition." "Indeed it does," Mrs. Henley agreed. "Tonight's show has been in preparation for 3 months, with cast members ranging from 6 years old to 78. Everyone in the production has day jobs or school commitments, but they've dedicated their evenings and weekends to creating something magical for our community." This information added depth to Catherine's appreciation for the evening. The performance they were about to witness represented hundreds of hours of volunteer effort by community members who shared a passion for storytelling and celebration. Their attendance honored not just the evening's entertainment, but the broader tradition of grassroots artistic expression. A gentle chime indicated that the performance would begin in 10 minutes, prompting families to make their way toward the auditorium. Catherine noticed how smoothly the transition occurred, with theater staff efficiently guiding everyone to their seats without creating special procedures for their family. The Norfolk Community Theatre's auditorium seated exactly 200 people, as James had reported, but the intimate space felt much larger due to clever staging and lighting design. Red velvet seats arranged in gently curved rows ensured that every audience member would have clear sightlines to the stage, while warm lighting created an atmosphere of anticipation and comfort. Catherine, Charlotte, and Louis were seated in the third row, close enough to appreciate the performers' expressions but not so prominently placed as to draw attention away from the stage. The seats immediately around them were occupied by other families, creating the community integration that Catherine had specifically requested. "Mummy, it's starting," Louis whispered excitedly as the house lights dimmed and the curtain began to rise. The opening scene transported the audience to a snowy village where Christmas magic was mysteriously disappearing. The story, as Sophie had described, centered around children who embarked on a quest to restore holiday wonder to their community. The production values impressed Catherine with their creativity and heart, demonstrating how passionate volunteers could create theatrical magic without elaborate budgets. Charlotte and Louis sat transfixed as the story unfolded. Charlotte leaned forward during dramatic moments, completely absorbed in the narrative, while Louis clapped enthusiastically after each musical number, his reindeer jumper lights blinking in rhythm with his applause. During the first act, Catherine found herself thinking about the parallels between the story's themes and their own evening's purpose. Just as the fictional children in the play were working to restore community magic, their family's presence in this ordinary theater was part of a broader effort to maintain the connection between royal tradition and contemporary life. The first act concluded with the young protagonists discovering that Christmas magic could only be restored through community cooperation and shared belief. As the lights came up for intermission, Catherine could see the impact the performance was having on children throughout the audience, including her own. "That was amazing," Charlotte said, turning to Catherine with shining eyes. "The girl who plays Lucy reminds me of my friend from school. She makes all her expressions seem so real." Louis was practically bouncing in his seat with excitement. "Mummy, when they asked everyone to believe in Christmas magic, I believed as hard as I could. Did you see the star get brighter when we all believed together?" Catherine had indeed noticed the subtle lighting effect that responded to the audience's participation, but, more importantly, she had observed how naturally Charlotte and Louis had joined in the collective experience. They had clapped, sung, and believed along with every other child in the theater, without self-consciousness or awareness that their participation might be observed differently than others. During intermission, families moved freely throughout the lobby, discussing the first act and sharing excitement about the conclusion. Catherine noticed several parents encouraging their children to approach Charlotte and Louis, not for autographs or formal meetings, but for the kind of casual conversation that naturally occurs between young theater-goers. "Did you like the part where the Christmas tree started talking?" asked a boy who appeared to be Louis's age. "Yes. But I was a little scared when the tree's voice got really deep," Louis replied honestly. "Were you scared too?" "A little bit, but then Lucy made friends with the tree and it wasn't scary anymore," the boy said. Catherine listened to this exchange while chatting with other parents about community theater, local Christmas traditions, and the universal challenge of keeping children entertained during school holidays. These conversations felt refreshingly normal, focused on shared experiences rather than royal protocol or formal courtesies. Emma, the mother they had met before the show, approached Catherine during intermission with a thoughtful expression. "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it's wonderful to see your children experiencing theater the same way mine do. They're clearly enjoying themselves genuinely." "That's exactly what I hoped for tonight," Catherine replied. "Theater should be magical for everyone, regardless of their background or circumstances." "Well, you've certainly succeeded," Emma said. "Sophie has already announced that she wants to audition for next year's production, inspired by watching Charlotte's enthusiasm for the performance." This comment touched Catherine deeply. The idea that her daughter's natural enjoyment of theater might encourage other children to pursue their own artistic interests represented exactly the kind of positive influence she wanted the royal family to have on community life. The second act proved even more engaging than the first, with the story building toward a climax that required audience participation to help the fictional children restore Christmas magic to their village. When the cast asked for volunteers to come on stage and help light the community Christmas tree, several children were selected, including Charlotte. Catherine watched with a mixture of pride and nervousness as her daughter walked onto the stage, joining 4 other children in the magical ceremony that would conclude the story. Charlotte followed the cast's instructions perfectly, holding a candle that would contribute to the communal lighting of the tree while remaining completely focused on her role in the story rather than the audience's attention. "Now everyone must believe together," the lead actress announced, "or the magic won't work." The entire auditorium erupted in enthusiastic participation, with children and adults alike calling out their belief in Christmas magic. Louis stood on his seat, shouting "I believe." I believe, with wholehearted commitment, while Catherine found herself swept up in the collective energy and joining her voice to the chorus. As the stage Christmas tree lit up in response to the audience's shared faith, Catherine realized that she was witnessing something much more significant than a simple community theater production. The evening had become a demonstration of how authentic shared experiences could unite people across all kinds of social boundaries, creating connections that transcended formal roles or public expectations. Charlotte returned to her seat glowing with excitement and pride at having contributed to the story's successful conclusion. "Mummy, did you see how bright the tree got when everyone believed together? I could feel the magic working." "I saw it and felt it too," Catherine replied honestly, pulling her daughter close for a quick hug before the final scene began. The show concluded with all the characters celebrating the restoration of Christmas magic, while the audience joined in singing traditional carols that filled the theater with warmth and joy. Catherine noticed tears in the eyes of several parents around them, moved by both the performance and the shared experience of watching their children participate so wholeheartedly in the theatrical magic. As the curtain fell and the applause began, Catherine stood with Charlotte and Louis, clapping enthusiastically for a cast that had given their community a perfect Christmas gift. The evening had exceeded her hopes in every possible way, demonstrating that royal children could participate fully in ordinary cultural experiences while contributing positively to the community around them. The standing ovation continued for several minutes, with the cast clearly moved by the audience's appreciation. When Mrs. Henley took the microphone for final announcements, she looked directly at Catherine's family with visible gratitude. "Tonight's performance has been particularly special because we've been reminded that the magic of theater belongs to everyone who chooses to believe in its power," she announced. "Thank you to all our families for making this evening unforgettable." Catherine felt certain that this Christmas show in Norfolk would indeed prove unforgettable, but perhaps not for the reasons that anyone in attendance could have anticipated when the evening began. The moments immediately following the final curtain call created a gentle transition from theatrical magic back to reality, but Catherine could sense that the evening's impact would extend far beyond the closing of the red velvet curtains. As families began gathering their coats and children, the atmosphere remained warm and celebratory, with conversations continuing throughout the auditorium about the performance and the special nature of the shared experience. Mrs. Henley approached Catherine as they prepared to leave their seats, her face radiant with the satisfaction of a successful production and the obvious pleasure of having welcomed such engaged audience members. "Catherine, before you go, would you and the children like to meet our cast backstage?" she offered. "They would be absolutely thrilled to thank you personally for your attendance, but only if it wouldn't be imposing on your evening." Catherine looked at Charlotte and Louis, both of whom nodded eagerly at the prospect of meeting the performers who had created the magical world they had just experienced. She appreciated Mrs. Henley's careful phrasing, which offered the opportunity without creating pressure or obligation. "We would love to meet the cast," Catherine replied. "Charlotte and Louis have been so inspired by the performance, and I think they would treasure the chance to thank the actors personally." The brief journey backstage revealed the organized chaos that characterized community theater productions everywhere. Costumes hung on portable racks, props were being carefully stored for future performances, and cast members of all ages were removing makeup while still glowing with the adrenaline of a successful show. Charlotte and Louis moved through this backstage world with wonder, observing how theatrical illusions were created and maintained. Catherine watched her children's faces as they discovered that the talking Christmas tree was actually a teenager from the local secondary school, and that the magical snow falling during the forest scenes came from a simple but ingenious mechanical system operated by two elderly volunteers. "Your Royal Highness," began the young woman who had played Lucy, the story's brave protagonist, "thank you so much for coming tonight. Having you in the audience made everything feel even more special." "Please, call me Catherine," she replied, maintaining the informal tone that had characterized the entire evening. "And thank you for such a beautiful performance. You brought the character to life in a way that made everyone in the audience believe in the magic of the story." Charlotte stepped forward with characteristic directness. "You were brilliant as Lucy. When you had to be brave even though you were scared, you made me want to be brave too." The actress's face lit up at Charlotte's sincere praise. "That's the most wonderful compliment I could receive," she said. "Theater is supposed to help people discover their own courage and magic. Lewis, meanwhile, had become fascinated by the costume rack and was examining the intricate details of the various outfits worn during the performance. One of the older cast members, a man who had played the wise village elder, noticed his interest and began explaining how community theater costumes were often created through collaboration between cast members, local seamstresses, and creative volunteers. Each costume tells part of the story, he explained to Lewis. See this jacket? 3 different people worked on it. Mrs. Patterson did the basic sewing, her grandson added the decorative buttons, and I painted the weathered effects to make it look like it belonged to someone who had lived through many winters. Catherine found this explanation deeply moving. The collaborative nature of the costume creation reflected the broader community spirit that made local theater such an important cultural institution. Every element of the evening's performance had emerged from shared effort and mutual support, creating something more beautiful and meaningful than any individual could have achieved alone. As they continued their backstage tour, Catherine noticed how naturally Charlotte and Lewis interacted with cast members of all ages. Her children asked questions about the rehearsal process, the development of characters, and the practical aspects of creating theatrical magic with limited resources. Their genuine curiosity and appreciation clearly delighted the performers, who responded with detailed explanations and obvious pride in their craft. "Mummy," Charlotte said quietly as they prepared to leave the backstage area, "could I audition for a play sometime? Not because I'm a princess, but because I love how the stories make people feel." The question caught Catherine slightly off guard, not because it was unexpected, but because it represented exactly the kind of authentic artistic interest she had hoped to encourage through their evening at the community theater. "I think that would be wonderful," Catherine replied carefully. "We would need to find the right opportunity and make sure it works with your other responsibilities, but pursuing interests in theater and the arts is important for everyone." Mrs. Henley, who had overheard this conversation, stepped forward with an idea. "Catherine, we run drama workshops for children during school holidays. Charlotte would be welcome to attend if she's genuinely interested in learning more about theater. We focus on storytelling, character development, and ensemble work rather than performance for its own sake." Catherine could see the appeal of this suggestion. Drama workshops would provide Charlotte with artistic education and peer interaction while avoiding the complications of formal performances or public attention. The community focus would reinforce the lessons about collaboration and creativity that had made the evening's experience so valuable. Could Lewis participate too? Catherine asked, noticing her younger son's continued fascination with the theatrical process. "Absolutely," Mrs. Henley replied. "We have age-appropriate activities for all our young participants. The goal is helping children discover their own creative voices while learning to work together on shared projects." As they made their final farewells to the cast and crew, Catherine reflected on how the evening had evolved from a simple family outing into something much more significant. The Norfolk Community Theater had provided her children with their first taste of participatory arts culture, but, more importantly, it had demonstrated that royal engagement with community life could be both authentic and mutually beneficial. The journey home passed quietly, with Charlotte and Lewis processing their experiences while gazing out at the countryside illuminated by occasional streetlights and the gentle glow of snow. Catherine used the peaceful drive to consider the broader implications of the evening's success and how it might influence future family activities. "Mummy," Lewis said sleepily from his car seat, "when we go to the drama workshop, will we learn to make Christmas magic too?" "We'll learn to help other people believe in magic," Catherine replied, struck by the wisdom of his question. "And sometimes that's the most important magic of all." Charlotte, who had been quietly thoughtful during the drive, suddenly spoke up with characteristic insight. "Mummy, tonight felt different from our other public activities. People talked to us like we were regular children who just happened to be there." Catherine considered how to respond to this observation. At 8 years old, Charlotte was beginning to understand the complex dynamics of royal public life and the often artificial nature of formal engagements. The Norfolk theater experience had provided a counterpoint to those experiences, demonstrating that meaningful public interaction didn't require ceremony or protocol. "What made it feel different to you?" Catherine asked, genuinely curious about her daughter's perspective. "Everyone was focused on the same thing," Charlotte explained thoughtfully. We all came to see the Christmas show, so we had something in common that was more important than who we are or what we do other times. This analysis impressed Catherine with its sophistication and accuracy. Charlotte had identified the essential element that had made the evening successful: shared purpose that transcended individual status or background. The community theater had provided a context where royal titles mattered less than genuine appreciation for artistic expression and collective celebration. By the time they reached Sandringham, both children had fallen asleep in their car seats, exhausted by the excitement and sensory richness of their first community theater experience. Catherine carefully carried Louis to his room while Charlotte drowsily made her own way upstairs, both children still wearing the contented expressions of people who had been thoroughly entertained and emotionally fulfilled. As Catherine tucked them into bed, she realized that the evening's success had created new possibilities for their family's approach to public life. The Norfolk Community Theater had proven that royal children could participate authentically in ordinary cultural activities while contributing positively to community experiences. This model could potentially be applied to other situations, creating opportunities for Charlotte and Louis to develop genuine interests and relationships outside the traditional royal sphere. The following morning brought unexpected confirmation of the evening's broader impact. James Morrison arrived with a collection of newspaper clippings, social media reports, and feedback from the palace press office that painted an overwhelmingly positive picture of the family's theater attendance. "Ma'am, the coverage has been remarkably favorable," James reported during their morning briefing. "The focus has been on the children's natural enjoyment of the performance and your family's respectful integration into the community event." Catherine reviewed the newspaper photographs from the evening, struck by how genuinely happy and relaxed everyone appeared. The images captured Charlotte and Louis clapping enthusiastically, laughing at comic moments, and participating wholeheartedly in the audience responses. Most importantly, the photographs showed them behaving exactly like any other children at a special evening out. "What about reaction from the theater community?" Catherine asked, curious about whether their attendance had been viewed as positive by those most directly affected. "Extraordinarily positive," James replied. "Mrs. Henley has received interview requests from 3 theater publications wanting to discuss how community venues can successfully welcome high-profile guests while maintaining their essential character." This development pleased Catherine because it suggested that their evening might encourage other community organizations to extend similar invitations to royal family members, creating more opportunities for authentic public engagement. The most significant response came in an unexpected phone call from William later that morning. His voice carried genuine pride and enthusiasm as he described the media coverage and public reaction to the Norfolk visit. "Catherine, I think you've discovered something important," William said. "The coverage focuses entirely on family values and community participation, with no criticism or controversy. People seem genuinely pleased to see Charlotte and Louis enjoying themselves as normal children." "It felt completely natural," Catherine replied. "I think the key was choosing an activity where we could participate authentically rather than being expected to observe or perform." "I've been thinking about that," William continued. "Perhaps we should consider developing a broader program of family cultural activities. Theater, music, local festivals, events where we can contribute to community life while giving the children normal experiences." Catherine felt a surge of excitement at this suggestion. William's support for expanding their approach to family public life would make it much easier to provide Charlotte and Louis with the kind of authentic childhood experiences she believed were crucial for their development as both individuals and future royal family members. 3 weeks after the Norfolk Community Theater visit, Catherine received a handwritten thank you note from Sophie, the young girl who had explained the Christmas show to Charlotte during intermission. The note included a drawing of the theatrical Christmas tree and a message that brought tears to Catherine's eyes: "Thank you for coming to our show and making Charlotte feel like a regular friend. She inspired me to audition for next year's production." Catherine realized that the evening's impact had extended in directions she never could have anticipated. Their attendance hadn't just provided her children with cultural enrichment and community connection, but had apparently inspired other young people to pursue their own artistic interests and dreams. As she placed Sophie's note in her private correspondence file, Catherine reflected on how a simple Christmas show invitation had evolved into something much more significant, a proof of concept for a new kind of royal family engagement with public life, one based on authentic participation rather than formal observation, on shared experiences rather than ceremonial distance. The Norfolk Community Theatre had given them the gift of normalcy, but, perhaps more importantly, it had demonstrated that royal service could include the simple act of being present for community celebrations, bringing joy through participation rather than position, and contributing to the magic of shared cultural experiences. 6 months later, Charlotte and Louis would indeed enroll in the theater's summer drama workshop, beginning a relationship with community arts that would influence their understanding of creativity, collaboration, and service for years to come. But those developments were still in the future as Catherine sat in her study, looking out at the estate grounds and planning their next family adventure in ordinary extraordinary experiences.